Let's dive right into today's explainer, where we're going to explore the profound philosophical foundations of human existence through a pretty incredible lens: ancient Chinese medicine. We're looking at how the natural world, specifically the elements forged deep within the earth, actually mirror and interact with our own internal architecture. And, our relationship with these elements is unbelievably ancient. I mean, early hominids were literally using stones like hematite to make markings 164,000 years ago. So our connection to this architecture of being goes back to the very dawn of humanity. It's a really fascinating journey that bridges the gap between our physical ailments, our emotional struggles, and our deepest spiritual aspirations.
Our guide for this exploration is an amazing piece of source material, Stone Medicine by Leslie J. Franks. This book distills the teachings of Dr. Jeffrey C. Yoon, who was an 88th-generation Taoist priest. And what's truly captivating here is how it reveals the instinctual, intimate relationship humans have always had with stones. Early humans learned by doing, right? Through profound experience. They figured out that a napped obsidian blade was phenomenally sharp. In fact, modern science shows it has a cleaner, sharper edge than high-quality surgical steel. They also mastered early fire technology by striking flint with marcasite. But it went way beyond just survival and practicality. Ancient people were using toxic stibnite to create this striking eyeshadow, and a stone like jet seamlessly transitioned from being a vital Stone Age amulet to becoming the absolute quintessential Victorian mourning jewelry. From pure survival to adornment, these early practitioners knew that the immense weight, durability, and elemental composition of these stones could deeply impact our health and our energetic balance.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. Classical medicine and nature. 2. The metaphors of illness. 3. The 3 prerequisites of life. 4. The 3 treasures. And finally, 5. The energetic terrains of being. Let's jump into section 1. Classical medicine and nature. The macro connection.
Okay, so there's a really vital distinction we need to establish right up front. The ancient, spiritually rooted classical Chinese medicine is vastly different from what most people know today as traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. TCM is a modernized, much more simplified system created in the 20th century after the Cultural Revolution, and it mostly focuses on treating symptom patterns for quick fixes. Classical Chinese medicine, on the other hand, is a lineage-based tradition dating back thousands of years. It's full of profound, sometimes highly mystical approaches. For example, the famous pharmacologist Li Shizhen formulated a legendary jade spring elixir that was actually brewed in the pursuit of literal immortality. Classical medicine operates on this fundamental belief that all illness is ultimately a separation from spirit. So, the practitioner's true goal? Treat that root cause, not just put a band-aid on the physical symptoms.
Moving on to section 2, the metaphors of illness, reacting to change.
In classical texts, the very first pathogenic factor, known as wind, is actually considered the cause of hundreds of diseases. Wind represents the absolute inevitability of change. If we resist adapting to our environment, and that could mean a literal change in the weather or a major life transition like aging, we feel that friction physically. Because wind moves and blows unpredictably, its symptoms are all about erratic movement. Sneezing, acute allergies, twitches, spasms, or just this restless inability to sit still. To combat these rapid, superficial wind afflictions, ancient practitioners actually invented the world's very first acupuncture needles by carefully carving specific stones like tourmaline, flint, and agate.
Next up is cold, which perfectly symbolizes our resistance to those winds of change. Think about what cold does out in nature, right? It freezes, it constricts, it halts movement completely. Well, in the body, cold literally restricts our movement and creates dense, heavy blockages in our energy. Physically, this shows up as sharp, fixed pain or poor circulation. Emotionally, it roots us in hesitation, depression, and fear. It literally freezes us in our tracks. To break through these intensely dense, frozen blockages, and even heal things like broken bones, the ancients used incredibly complex remedies, like a super potent concoction of pyrite, licorice, and vinegar.
Then we have dampness. You know that heavy, sinking, aching feeling that just weighs you down? That's dampness. It can come from a rich, heavy food diet, but it can also manifest from being completely paralyzed by emotional indecision. Because it's slow-moving and tends to accumulate, it creeps up on you before you even realize you're totally bogged down. Ancient cultures had some fascinating ways to deal with this heavy dampness. The Greeks, for instance, famously believed that drinking from amethyst goblets could clear the heavy, damp intoxication of alcohol out of their system. Meanwhile, other cultures revered chalcedony as the soothing milkstone specifically used to clear out sluggish, damp energy.
Finally, we've got heat.
Heat is actually your body's urgent, fiery, physiological response desperately trying to neutralize those blockages of cold or dampness. The body literally generates heat to invigorate and break up constrictions, which we experience as inflammation, fever, or even anxiety. Now, a lot of modern quick fixes, like certain pharmaceuticals, have a strong cooling effect. But if you use them improperly, they can actually suppress this natural heat response and push the original cold pathogen even deeper into your tissues. The desire for deeply cooling, purifying properties was taken so seriously back in the day that Emperor Qianlong actually launched massive military campaigns into Burma, specifically just to secure sources of highly prized jadeite.
All right, Section 3. 3 Prerequisites of Life. The Evolutionary Imperative.
So first, we have survival. This is that basic instinct governed by our lungs, stomach, and heart. The stuff driving us to breathe, digest our food, and get some sleep. But surviving isn't truly living, is it? That brings us to level 2, interaction. This is where we actually engage with the world, seeking out purpose, building community, and forming relationships. And finally, we reach differentiation. This is how we filter all those interactions, limiting our choices so we can establish our unique identity and maintain our mental and emotional stability in a chaotic world.
So, I have to ask, are you stuck in survival mode, or are you actively engaging in interaction to find your real purpose? As this beautiful quote prompts us to consider, we just don't figure out who we are in a vacuum. We learn about ourselves by bumping up against others, discovering what we love, figuring out what we reject, and ultimately defining the totally unique life we want to build.
Which brings us to Section 4, the 3 treasures, Jing, Qi, and Shen.
The internal landscape of our being is governed by these 3 treasures. At the very base, in the lower abdomen, we have Jing. This is our dense physical essence and our genetic makeup. Moving up to the middle abdomen and chest is Qi, the energy that literally animates us and allows us to form relationships. And right at the top, up in the head, is Shen, our spirit and our connection to the divine. The whole goal of internal alchemy here is to refine that dense physical Jing into flowing Qi and then transform that Qi into Shen. And when it came to connecting with that ultimate, divine Shen level, the ancients did not mess around. They took it quite literally, combining a highly sacred mix of cinnabar and iron meteorite to draft and send their most important petitions directly up to heaven. Talk about a cosmic delivery system.
And finally, Section 5, energetic terrains of being. Mapping the energy. So on the most surface level of our energetic anatomy, we have Wei Qi. This is associated with the skin and muscles, and it manages our quick, defensive, instinctual responses. Deeper in, we find Ying Qi, associated with our blood and flesh. This is our conscious, cognitive level, where we make choices and navigate our complex emotions. Back in the day, scholars even used beautifully carved agate snuff bottles to physically represent this graceful, mindful Ying Qi energy. Then, at the absolute core, deep within our bones and DNA, is our Yan Qi. This is our source energy, containing the deep blueprint of our destiny. To connect with this profound level, the ancients relied heavily on the philosophical power of Amazonite and serpentine bee pendants, these circular stones that literally represented the mandate of heaven itself.
Now, plant herbs are relatively light, right? So they work great on the surface levels of our energy. But stones are incredibly heavy, incredibly dense, and ancient. Because of this profound physical density, they bypass all the superficial layers and speak directly to our bones, our marrow, and our deepest Yilan Qi. They have this completely unique ability to anchor our energy downward, addressing foundational illnesses, hormonal imbalances, and even the roots of deep emotional trauma. And humanity's absolute craving for this deep restorative power is woven all throughout history. You see it in the Dowager Empress importing massive amounts of pink tourmaline in the 19th century, or the strategic use of topaz as this brilliant physical disguise for projecting raw imperial power.
At the end of the day, everything in the universe, from the stones buried in the earth to the literal cells in your body, is subject to the winds of change. So the real question is, how are you navigating that change? How are you actively transforming your own essence through the trials and interactions of your life? And, just maybe, could the ancient grounded wisdom of stones be exactly the tool you need to anchor your energy, clear out those blockages, and finally unlock your true destiny? Until next time, keep exploring.